To work up the aspirin, we're going to start by placing the aqueous layer flask into an ice bath. One thing to note, you should always label your things with Sharpie because I labeled one of the tapes with pen and it completely washed off when I put it in the bath. Next, we are going to add 8 milliliters of hydrochloric acid to the flask, 1 milliliter at a time. The reason we add 1 milliliter at a time is that when you add an acid to a base or a base to an acid, you're going to get some bubbling that's going to occur in your flask. And if you add it all at once, the bubbling could be very aggressive and even bubble out of the flask. So we want to make sure to add this 1 ml at a time. You should be able to see in the flask that it looks foggy when we add the acid. That's the aspirin starting to precipitate out of solution. We've now added all 8 milliliters and we have a solid precipitate that is formed in our solution. We need to double check the pH to make sure that it is acidic. So I'm going to take my glass rod and stir it around in the flask just to mix everything together and make sure that I don't hit like a pocket of just acid or just base. Then we're going to spot that glass rod on a pH paper. When you compare the paper to the color-coded chart on the side of the bottle, you can see that it is acidic. We are going to add 10 more drops of the hydrochloric acid to our flask just to ensure maximum aspirin precipitation, and then leave it in the ice bath again for the same reason, to make sure all of the aspirin has a chance to precipitate out. Once we're done with that, we are going to set up a second vacuum filtration apparatus. So this time, our goal is to save the solid product from the filtration, which means that we have a pre-weighed filter paper in there that has been seated with ice cold DI water. We are going to pour the aqueous flask over top of the funnel. Since we are saving the solid from this experiment, you need to make sure to transfer as much of the solid into the funnel as possible. Any solid that gets left behind in the flask could lead to a decrease in our percent recovery. Once we're done, we have aspirin sitting in the funnel and waste in the filtrate. I'm then going to take that aspirin and transfer it into a pre-weighed large filter paper. The weight of the large filter paper is also on the next slide. There's no fancy way to transfer it. You just want to take your Buchner funnel and tap on it until the filter paper that's inside of the funnel falls out into the large filter paper. Then I'm going to take some tweezers to transfer any remaining aspirin from the funnel into my filter paper. Normally I would use a micro spatula, but I didn't have one on hand when we did this, so tweezers it is. Finally, we are just folding this up like an envelope. So we're going to take the large filter paper and keep the small filter paper and aspirin inside of it, fold it in half, then fold the edges over, and finally fold the top down. This is going to have some time to dry out so that our weight will be as accurate as possible. The weight of this packet is recorded on the next slide.